All right, so welcome everybody. This is Joy Warland from the Department of Libraries. I'm the consultant for small and rural libraries and continuing education. And this is an intro and orientation to the Certificate of Public Librarianship program. I just want to check, can everybody see a slide that says Certificate of Public Librarianship Orientation? If you
Yeah.
can't, please type in. Okay. All right. So normally we do these orientations at sort of on a semester schedule, like in August and January, but there's so many people who are taking a lot of classes right now, and we all have these weird schedules. So we decided that we would just welcome people in now. People can register at any time and start at any time, but it just seemed like a good time to introduce the program to people who are new to it. So the purpose of the program is for people who are running a library or working in a library in Vermont, but who have not necessarily had professional library training. So people who don't have a Master of Library and Information Science. Sometimes it's people who've been doing it quite a while and have really a lot of knowledge about it, but this sort of solidifies some of the more formal aspects of librarianship that you might not pick up from doing it in your daily life, even though you're doing a great job at your daily life. So it's basically, as you know, there's no charge for it. It's funded by our federal funding that we get from the at the Department of Libraries, and this is one of the things that we use it for. And our goal is just to increase the training of librarians at all levels of librarianship in Vermont so we can provide better services. So these are the requirements of the certificate program. It's 150 continuing education units or credits. It's just lingo for credits, basically. And I know that sounds like a tremendously large number of credits, but the reason is that each of the core courses earn 25 CEUs. So that goes back to originally this program was all in person, and those core courses were actually 5 days long. We don't have capacity to teach in that way. People don't necessarily have capacity to attend something like that anymore either. And then also we just have a lot more online options now than we did when the program started. But for now, the credit system works out the same way as it always did, and it makes a nice round number. So for each of those core courses, which are collection development, information services, cataloging, and public library administration, once you complete those, you get 25 CEUs for each of those. And then there is also 10 CEUs for library technology, which can be a variety of things, and then 40 of electives. And I'll talk more later about what some of the electives could be and some recommended topics. It can basically be anything that is library related, but there are some that are pretty essential that aren't requirements but sort of recommended because they come up a lot in your daily life. And is there a question? No, that's okay.
This is the other Joy.
Hi, Joy.
I saw on the calendar that a couple of, I think, technology courses are coming up, like Twitter for beginners and I think Instagram.
Yes.
Would that be considered library technology?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, those are both coming up. I'll go over what we have coming up in the near future at the end. But basically, I'm glad you actually stopped and asked that, because if you aren't sure if something counts for credit or which category it would be in, it's always best to just check ahead of time so you don't spend a lot of time or effort and sometimes money on something that might not count. But generally, there's quite a bit of things that do count. It's just sometimes it's a matter of which category they fit in. So again, the core courses are the 4 areas of librarianship, and then technology, requirement, and electives, which can be a variety of things. The electives are also the easiest ones to find because hopefully you're all on the staff mailing list, the listserv that we do from the Department of Libraries, and I send out weekly updates of webinars that are available. Usually there's at least some that are free. WebJunction is a company that offers a huge amount of free webinars, and they archive them too. So there's almost always electives that you can find. Sometimes it's 1 hour at a time, so it means taking a lot of them. Technology is a little trickier because there are companies that also offer technology webinars, but they're not quite as common. And we're trying to begin offering more of that category at the department, but we don't offer it as much as we do some of the other areas, so for now anyway. So the required core courses have to either be taken from the Department of Libraries, or 3 of the 4 of them can be filled online through the Idaho Commission for Libraries. There's a that's from the Idaho State Library, and they offer free online sequences for everything except for the administration. So if you want to get it done, on your own schedule and online, you can always do those. And then there's other vendors that people have done sometimes. Sometimes people have taken a college class, or they've taken something else online. There aren't a lot of free online things that are available that fulfill the core courses, but sometimes people are just on a timeline and they want to get something done. So if it's not the Department of Libraries or the Idaho Commission for Libraries, though, you should just check with me and make sure that it would count for the core courses. So now we come to the part where we're in a really weird state right now, because we aren't offering any in-person courses, because typically we have a schedule of when we offer those core courses, and we try to make sure that we offer each of them once a year. So they are each a day and a half long, like one day, one full day, and then usually like 3 weeks later a follow-up day of half a day. That might be on a specific, like a deeper dive into a specific area of the topic, or just more information on the topic. And again, each of those earn 25 CEUs. So yeah, here's what I was speaking of before. This is what our normal schedule would be, but we had to cancel information services or postpone it. We'll probably try to do it in the fall, but we try to not have in-person courses in the winter. We tried that a couple of years ago, and it was just too touch and go with weather, and sometimes people couldn't come, and or we had to postpone. And so we do the in-person ones. Hopefully by fall we'll be able to get back on the schedule where we'll have 2 in the fall, and we'll probably add information services in the fall as well, in person. But that way you can sort of plan out which ones you're taking, and if it doesn't work with your schedule, that's when it's sometimes helpful for people to do the Idaho courses online. And we are also hoping at the department to continue to offer more online things, and even before this crisis happened and we had to move things online, we're looking at just trying to give people more options. A lot of people really like the in-person, getting to know the other librarians, and just the discussion and everything that can happen in person. But the other side of it is that it is hard to travel. We do these in-person courses usually in Barrie, and that's not convenient for some people, and it's hard for people to get time off. So we want to, ideally, our goal is to have them available either in person and also online, so that people have options for what works for them. So right now we have an administration option online, because ALA had offered in the winter a series of webinars to New England libraries that we as a department basically subscribe to, but they're free to you, and they've already happened in person, but they're all recorded. There were initially supposed to be 5 of them. One of them was postponed back in January, still hasn't been rescheduled. So we decided we would just do our own version of the 5th one, and that is actually next week on April 15th. And then even before that one got canceled, we had a supplemental Vermont afternoon, like a 4-hour course, just to dig it really into the administration, specifically of Vermont libraries. Since we had to go online, we split that in 2, because 4 hours seemed like a long time for an online class. So that'll be on April 23rd and May 6th. So if you want to finish your administration requirement, you could do the 4-part recordings from the ALA webinars and then attend these 3 webinars through the Department of Libraries. So those are each, the ALA ones are 90 minutes long, and then 2 of our webinars are 90 minutes long, and the May 6th one is 2 hours. So the Vermont ones are about governance and budget, because governance in Vermont libraries is fairly different, and the ones from ALA are more just general management things about small libraries, which are very applicable to us, but not so much in the governance area. So all of this is on our website too, on the continuing education page. Just a second, I'm looking at a question in the, click on the link to open. I'm not sure what window are you trying to open, Joy? Oh, like
it's the slide that you're looking at right now. I wanted to click on that link. Yeah.
Oh, did it not bring you out?
No, it didn't do anything. It might be my computer. I'm not sure.
It's looking like it's a live link in mine, but that link is on our website as well, so you can go and look at them. So they're
perfect.
Yeah,
okay. Thank you. Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's what we're here for. So again, it's 150 credits total. The deadline, which is a quite broad one, is after you register, you have 5 years to complete this. So I think that also goes back to when everything was in person. A lot of people have done it in quite a bit less than 5 years, more recently, sometimes even a year. And this is a good time to knock out a lot of the online ones. So basically, you track what you're doing on your own and send it to me, and then I make a transcript for you and make sure you have all your credits. In the past, I had been doing a schedule where I would review the transcripts in December and in May before the VLA conference, so that people could get their certificates at the conference. But right now, with our weird schedules that everybody has, and people having a lot more time to do CE, just send them to me as you're doing them, if that works for you, or in a clump, once a month or something, and I'll just process them, not immediately, but just on a schedule, as they come in, just so that people can finish up if they, and just even if you're not finished, you'll know where you are. But generally, once we get back on the schedule, I try to make sure to do them like mid-year, December, and then at the beginning of May, so that if people are finished, they can get their certificate at the conference in May. But of course, there is no conference in May this year. But at any point when you finish, actually, I will send you the official letter saying you're certified. And then the actual certificate we will mail once we get back into our office if people have finished in the next year before another conference. But we also just at the conference like to kind of honor people and hand out and have a little ceremony of giving out the certificate. But it's actually the letter that is the official, you're finished now. So you'll get that within a few days of when I've processed your transcript and seen that you're finished. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to add about that, even if when we're on that regular cycle, if you have something coming up, like your board is doing a review of you, or you're applying for a job or something, just let me know and I'll fit in processing it if you're about to be finished, just so you can have that credential if you need it for something specific like that. So that's not like set in stone that it's only in May and December. So for the non-core courses, the electives and the technology, they earn 1 CEU per contact hour. So if you watch a webinar that's an hour, you get 1 CEU. If you come to a workshop that's 2 hours, you get 2 CEUs. And we do half CEUs, like for a half-hour thing. And if it's 45 minutes, we just round up to 1. So it's there's a little bit of flexibility there. And again, I'll show you some things at the end of where you can find some of these webinars, but I also do have a list on our website. There's quite a long list of different organizations that offer online CE. Almost all of it is free. Sometimes there are some companies that do charge. We are also working at the department. We typically have some grants for attending conferences. Since there aren't conferences to attend right now, we're working on trying to find some ways that some of that paid CE online, we might be able to offer grants for that. That's still sort of a work in progress because it kind of popped up suddenly, like many things. But we are working on that, so that may be in the relatively near future. But even before that, there are an awful lot of free options. And I also do send out, as I said, the weekly CE update with things that are coming up in the next few weeks. So there have been a few people that have done sort of independent studies, or used some of the work that they're already doing to earn credit. That's just on a case-by-case basis. You'd have to sort of develop a curriculum, find somebody to monitor you and or mentor you, and then get it pre-approved ahead of time. We could figure out if it works for an independent study, and if so, how many CEUs it would be. So I'm hoping people will do that a little bit more. There's a really interesting one going on now, sort of a mentor-mentee pairing of somebody working on youth services with the mentor is somebody very experienced in youth services, and basically has plotted out like different tasks and different reading and things to try at her library. And it seems like a great pairing. They're in the midst of it now, and I suppose it probably parts of it are on hold. But I think there's a lot of knowledge and experience within our Vermont community, so there probably are people out there that could do something like that with you if you had time, and that just run it by me, and then you would get credit for it. Another example of that actually that's happened is in cataloging, because cataloging is something that it can be taught one-on-one really well, and like going through showing, demonstrating how to do it. And some people have done that with really experienced catalogers, or people who are really experienced at doing reports in their ILS is another really a good way to do that. So just keep that in mind so you have some flexibility about how to earn those credits. There have been some people who've taken college courses or multi-week courses through like a community college, or sometimes there's a few technology vendors here in Vermont that offer like a Microsoft training, that kind of thing. So those are, though it doesn't work to do those 1 CEU per hour, because then you would have like 50 CEUs. So we just cap it at 12 CEUs. So it's similar to like a college course is 12 weeks usually, or and then the same with attending conferences. So there's a form that we have. If you attend a conference, you can mark off on the form what you've done, and ideally get the person who's somebody to sign off, the presenter, to say that you were there, and then send that in. And again, so we limit that to 12 for a conference, so that if you go to something that's multi-days, you wouldn't be using up all your credits. But that definitely is continuing education, so we want to definitely give credit for those kind of attendances. Any questions so far? You can put in the chat or verbally.
Do you ever, for technology, do you ever have something on the ILL or any of that, so that I understand it, or should I just have my coworker teach me?
That's a good question. So a couple years ago, when we first switched over to Clover, there were several trainings on that, and I think there hasn't been one in a while, and it might be because most of the people have been doing it. So that's an example where you could actually do like have a sit-down one-on-one with somebody, as long as you told me ahead of time and said, these are the things we're going to cover, and this is somebody who's been doing IL a long time, and okay. So do a one-on-one. And then I will also check with April Shaw, who does those trainings, to see if, I don't know if there's a need for, how many new people there are that might benefit from another training. She does do a ILL roundtable, which is something that you could attend, but I think that's it's a little bit more conceptual than it is about like this is how you use Clover. So, but that might be useful as well.
Okay, Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Well, that's good. Somebody in the chat said they're also hoping to learn IL. So it might be a time just to ask April to do one of those sort of intro to Clover things again, because we do have people that have started up since then. And would be a good maybe refresher for people as well.
I know what we've talked about it at our library, and the director is so busy that it's hard to fit that in.
Yeah,
because I'm doing my own thing when she's there, but I kind of need to know how to do it.
Okay, well, I'm really glad we're talking about this now. I will ask April if she can do that again. I know when I was a director of a small library and trying to also do interlibrary loan, it was a complete game changer when I got someone else to do that, because it's pretty time consuming, and it was just took it to not have to deal with that and know that it was being well taken care of by someone else gave me a lot of time to do other things that I needed to be doing. So yeah, the more people that can be trained in that, I think the better. Okay, so I talked about the electives, that they basically can be anything that's library related, but there are certain things that are really important that didn't really get built into the requirements, because the requirements were established 25 years ago, honestly. So these are, again, they're not required, but these are just some recommended topics. Programming is really, really important. I'm sure a lot of you are already doing a lot of programming, but there's some great trainings on that. We do a little bit of training sometimes in person on that at the department, short workshops that have to do with like a specific topic, but there are a lot of online things as well. Community engagement, just like advocating for your library and making sure that you're well connected in the library and that you're collaborating with other organizations, is something that's really important now, that maybe, again, when the certificate started wasn't as vital, but there are a lot of trainings on that. Probably a lot of you are working with volunteers, which is managing volunteers is kind of its own thing, different than supervising staff, but that's also an issue. And HR issues. We're working with somebody from the UVM extension program a lot, Gary Deziel. He's actually going to be at our virtual meetup tomorrow to talk about HR issues and labor issues and budget in this time when library buildings are closed, and sort of how to manage that. But he's been doing some of our workshops, and he's great, because he's a financial, professional in the financial world professionally, but he's also a library trustee, so he has a ton of knowledge and a lot of experience with how it applies to Vermont libraries. So anytime you see his name pop up in one of our workshops, try to attend. So probably a lot of you are trying to or have created, or at least are editing the library's website. So training in that is good, and that takes care of some of your technology credits. Same with social media and MS Office training. And again, I mentioned before the reports from your ILS. It's hard for the department to do training in that, just because there's a lot of different ILS systems that people are using. But if you're a member of VOCAL, for example, or Catamount, those consortiums do offer training sometimes. And again, that's a really good one if you know someone who's really good at it, ask them to sit down with you and basically kind of give you a private lesson in it, because those reports they're kind of tricky to do, but they're so useful to the data that you gather from them. A few other ideas, working with friends, trustees. If you're directors, you may have to sometimes be the voice of your library to your select board, so getting training in that. In strategic planning, there's some very good training on that, and we'll probably be doing more training on that as well at the department, which is kind of tied to advocacy and really doing community assessment, so you know what your community needs, and then trying to see how your library can meet those needs, and having an actual plan for steps to get there is very important. And it's there's certain steps of doing it that people who've done it a lot of times can kind of walk you through, and it's very helpful. So, and then equity, diversity, and inclusion. There's a lot of online trainings about that, and then we also have done some at the department. We'll do more because those topics look different depending on where you live and what part of the country you're in. So equity, diversity, and inclusion in Vermont is not going to look the same as it does in, an urban place in another part of the country. So a combination with those, I think, of those sort of national trainings. The Public Library Association has a lot of trainings in that are excellent, but they are sometimes on sort of a large scale, and they require sort of rethinking your whole mission in a way that we probably don't have the capacity to do in some of the smaller libraries. And it also, those national trainings sometimes don't address the kind of diversity that we see here. So a mix of national and Vermont based on that would be advised. And then again, I talked about this some before, but just to remind you of different ways that you can earn your CEUs. Of course, our workshops, and then the Idaho Commission. In addition to the core courses that they offer, they have another sort of unit within their commission that does more specific topics. Like there's one on youth services. There's actually is one on interlibrary loan, although it's not, of course, Clover. It's not specific to Vermont system, but it does kind of go over the concepts of it and why it's important and best practices with it. The Web Junction is the one that just has tons of webinars, and they're if you go to their website, they're very well organized. So if you're looking for something about a certain topic, you can search, and multiple webinars on advocacy or technology or whatever you're looking for will come up. Anytime ALA or PLA or Booklist offer webinars, those will always count for credit. You don't need to check on those. Booklist often has free ones, and those often will be in my weekly updates. Oh, and then I wanted to talk about submitting proof of attendance to receive credit. Sometimes when you do a webinar, it'll generate an electronic certificate, and if you get that, just scan or forward it to me to prove it. If you don't have that, though, if you can send like an email if it confirms that you registered for it, and then just tell me, yes, I did it on this day and this is what it was about, like a sentence or two. Just because it varies whether or not people offer a certificate, we're not super strict about that. Like a great certificate if you have it, and if not, just explain to me what you've done, and I'm going to assume that you wouldn't make something that, you wouldn't create fiction around doing library CE, so I'm not too worried about that. But just there's a form on our website actually to track what you're taking, and you don't necessarily have to use that. Some people have just done an Excel spreadsheet. Some people have just sent things in as they're doing it. But if you want to track it yourself and send it just as, again, in clumps, that's probably the easiest way, and then I'll just go through and enter those into your transcript. And I try to send out where people are and send out copies of their transcript a couple times a year, just so you know where you are, and we make sure that we're both on the same page with that. And then this is the link to our CE site with this is the link that has all the different online options that are available, and that's right on. If you go to the Department of Libraries site, Continuing Education, on the left hand there's some links, one of them being the certificate, and then this as well. Any questions at this point? Okay, so I think probably most of you are already registered, but if you're not, there is the link to registration. It's called an application, but sometimes that's misleading to people. You don't have to like apply and get accepted. It's available to anybody who is associated with Vermont Libraries. So it's really more registration than application. And then the bottom link is the form I was just talking about. where you can track your progress and send it in as you want to. Registration is open continuously, and once you register, you'll start getting credit for things. You really should register if you haven't already, because theoretically you don't get credit for things if you're not registered. So you can't register now and say, oh, I took a class 2 years ago. Although there's some flexibility with that, especially because there was a time when this program sort of went dormant because of staffing at the Department of Libraries. There was an opening in this position for a while. So if you have done something in the past, just let me know and we can talk about it. But anything you take...
Excuse me.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, Joy.
Yeah.
So this is Rob. Mm-hmm. I just registered. So does that mean my email, I'm already technically now I will get emails automatically? It's not something I need to search for.
About the courses, like the different webinars?
About the courses, right, and the webinars, because I did register. I just want to confirm that.
So that's a good question. No, the information about this, we don't have a separate listserv for people who are in the certificate program. So if you're not signed up for this library staff listserv through the Department of Libraries, you should sign up for that.
Where do I go to sign? I couldn't find where I sign up then. Where?
So it's on our website, and it says it's under. Just a second, I'm going to pull it up right now just so I can tell you. There's a link that says something like for librarians. Just a second, I'm going to look at something. Okay, so if you go to the main page of the Department of Libraries website, on the left side it's got librarian information, and if about the 1, 2, 3, 4, the 7th one down, it's library listservs, and that'll show you all the different listservs that there are and how to sign up for them.
I don't see. Maybe I'm on the wrong page. I'm on libraries.vermont.gov.
Right. Okay. And do you see? There's like the scrolling screen of COVID-19 and the picture of the staff, and right underneath that.
No, I'm not. I don't see that. I'm literally on the Department of Libraries page.
That's the page that I'm talking about. So Rob, we can talk about this after, but if you're on the right page, okay. Maybe it's just not populating right completely, because there's basically 3 columns. There's librarian information, how can we help, and Department of Libraries. And under librarian information, one of the links is library listservs. So there's a variety of listservs. There's one for staff.
I see that.
Okay.
I see that now. Okay. Where do I put my email in?
So there are instructions on there. Basically, you email Joshua Muse, whose contact information is on there, and you ask him to be included on the listserv. So there's a library listserv for staff. There's one for small rural libraries. There's one specifically for ILL. There's one for trustees and friends. And
got it.
Yeah. So just pick the library staff one is the most general one. And so I always send the CE updates of things that are upcoming to library staff and small and rural. The other thing is to go occasionally on our website and look at the CE page, because as soon as we create a workshop, we put it on there, and there'll be a link to registration and the date and how to access if it's online. I should say also that once we get back into doing in-person workshops again, we do all the core courses in Barre, because we've got a big room there, and that's where all of our staff is, and it's somewhat centrally located. But for some of the other workshops, we are trying to not always do everything in central Vermont, because we know that's hard for people. It's always making the same people having to travel. So we've experimented some with doing them in multiple places, or just trying them not in Barre and just picking 2 or 3 places that are geographically diverse. So I hope that we will continue doing that, and so just so you know that is a goal, to not always make everybody come to Barre every time there's an in-person one. So here are some upcoming webinars. Tomorrow is another Vermont Libraries virtual meetup. I don't know if any of you've done any of those. We've done 2 so far, and it's just something we are doing during this time when we can't see each other in person and people can't see their staff and everything in person. Tomorrow's is going to be Gary Deziel, as I mentioned, from the UVM Extension, talking about budget and finances and some labor issues. You know, a lot of people are questions about their staff and their own situation. So he, besides having a finance background, he also has an HR background. So he's, again, a great resource. Then there's the one on the 15th of next week. That's the one you could take it independently if you just need electives, but it also, in conjunction with the ALA webinars and the other 2 management, governance, and budget ones we have coming up, fulfills the basic library administration requirement. So that'll be, I think we scheduled 90 minutes for that. I can't remember off the top of my head. Maybe it's 2 hours, an hour and a half or 2 hours. So again, it could count for electives, or it could be part of your basic library administration requirement. The Summer Performing Grants webinar, they're going to be done a little bit differently this year. So even if you've already done Summer Performer Grants in the past, that might be a good one to just to tune in on. And all the dates and specifics of this are on our website, but I wanted to just let you know the topics that are coming up. The Summer Performer Grants, that one of the big differences is it is going to allow for virtual performances this year, and it's also going to be extended a little bit longer because we don't really know yet what summer reading is going to look like and if we can even do it in person, so it's going to extend a little bit into the fall. And then the governance one is, again, part of the administration requirement if you want to do it that way, but it could also be electives. And then similarly with the last one on this list, the Vermont Public Libraries Budgets and Finance. The summer reading program one on May 4th, that's different from the grant one. So the one on April 17th is specifically about applying for that grant and instructions about that and what the grant's going to cover. The summer reading program is going to be more about the possibility of doing virtual programming or a mix or whatever questions people might have. And that'll be with the youth services consultant, Jonathan Clark and Jennifer Johnson, who you probably all know.
So Joy, if we've already applied for a summer performance grant after we did the initial summer reading program day, should have things changed? I mean, I never got anything other than we got your application.
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer, but I will ask Jennifer. So you're saying for this coming summer, you had already applied after you did the workshop that she did?
Yes.
Okay, so
there was the deadline at that time, and then
right, I know
so I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, and then of course all of this happened, and I did notice, you know, that there were the 2 meetings coming up, the performer grants and the reading program again. So if I've already done the initial reading program with Jennifer, should I sign up for the next one as well?
Well, I think that you should actually, because the I don't know. I'm going to check with her about the grants. You're probably all set with your application for that, but I'll double check.
Okay.
But the summer reading program workshop, it's all different now, so I think that that probably would be useful. It's specifically going to be about like where are we now and how do we do some sort of summer reading program, given that we don't know if we're going to be in person or how many, if we were going to have to limit how many people are in the library at one time. So unfortunately, probably a lot of the things that were in those previous workshops might not apply anymore.
Okay.
So, but I will.
Well, and I can email Jennifer also and ask her about the grants.
Okay.
I just wasn't sure. I didn't want to bombard her with a lot of questions.
Yeah, yeah. Why don't you go ahead and email her for your own specific one? Okay. But I will let her know also that it's it came up because there might be other people who have that same question. Okay. And then the other question is somebody asked in the chat, yes, the Twitter and Instagram webinars will count for the technology part. They're 45 minutes long, so they'll count each one continuing education unit. And then, yeah, this is just reminder to look at the website frequently, because we do add things, particularly now we're trying to add, just things for people to do, and giving out a lot of information about other vendors that are offering too. And then I believe that the next slide is one of my favorites. That's my dog Jasper. He's reading the New York Times, and I just thought it was a good symbol of remembering that continuing education leads to lifelong learning, which is all about being good librarians. So that's Jasper. He's he's 7 months old, but already reading the Times, and make sure that we're all lifelong learning and how to live with a 7-month-old puppy. So are there any other questions?
Hi, Joy. I have a question. This is Laura.
Hi, Laura.
Hi. So I hope I'm not belaboring this point at all, but I feel a little bit out of the loop because I'm not an employee of any Vermont libraries,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not on your listserv.
Yeah.
So I've been during these last few slides, I've been trying to look at the website and see what the best way for me to keep an eye out for upcoming webinars and such. And that's where I'm a little bit confused. So when I'm on the website, sorry, let me go back a couple pages back. So if I go under continuing education.
Mm-hmm. I'm going there now too, so we're on the same page. Okay.
Let's see. So now I'm kind of on. When I go to continuing education, and now this looks a little bit different for me, but if I go to, let's see, if I click on it, before this webinar, I've been clicking on the Certificate of Public Librarianship,
Mm-hmm.
which is the first one under. And then when I scroll down under certificate, then it says classes and workshops, and I'll click the Vermont Department of Libraries. Under the within that, it says classes and workshops, and then Vermont Department of Libraries. And within that text, it says mini workshops is highlighted as a live link.
So I'm not seeing what you're describing.
Okay, yeah, and those don't seem active, which is one of.
So I think you're on. I don't know where you are actually on that.
Okay.
So let's just step back, because this is. I mean,
Sure.
I don't want this to happen to other people. So if you go to libraries.vermont.gov.
Yep.
Okay, and then under How Can We Help? Are you seeing that?
Let me.
It's right under the picture of the.
Let me go back to
slideshow.
the.
I think what maybe happened is there is a link that's to the Certificate of Public Librarianship, but that's more like a description of the program and like what we're talking about right now. That's
Right.
not where all the current workshops are listed, because there are people that take our workshops that aren't in the certificate program. So they're open to all the Vermont libraries. And so we want to make sure they're looking at that. But
Yep. So you go ahead and tell me.
okay, so
I should go.
so you should go. Do you see where it says How Can We Help? Like underneath the slideshow?
Right now, and right now I'm at the Department of Libraries Agency of Administration.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a slideshow.
Okay, right under the slideshow.
Oh, help. Yes, I'm sorry. Yep.
Okay, so right in the top link there is continuing education.
Yep. Okay.
And that's the page that you're going to be going to a lot.
Okay.
That's where we update. It says upcoming workshops.
Yes.
And so every time we add one, we add something to there.
Okay.
And then while we're on this page, though, on the left-hand links, there's that link to the Certificate of Public Librarianship, but that's basically just a description of the program.
Right.
Recorded workshops are any of the ones that we have done that we're archived. So there's a few in there, not a lot. But another one that you would really want to do a lot is webinars for continuing education. That page is a list of a lot of different sources for finding online CE.
Right. And so and I clicked on that while we were looking at some of the other, while you were speaking, and that seems to have quite a bit of stuff. Okay. And so, but this page, this of the Department of Libraries, this is the main one, and it'll be listed for the upcoming workshops. This is where all of the ones that were in your former slides that you're talking about. Yes. This is the main one we're here in Vermont that I would sign up through.
Yes, and that is also the page that has the link to registration. So the way we set it up, the titles are the link to registration. Okay. Again, we aspire to have a more fluid kind of thing where you could, click, apply, or register, and that would be your link to access it. But we're just not there yet. So we have these kind of two-tiered things where you registers through one thing, and then we'll also put the post how to access it if it's online.
Okay, great. Well, this sounds great. This seems grounding. Like I can, this main page here seems grounding.
Yeah. So you can always do that. And then I will check. Some of the listservs you do actually have to be associated already with a library. There is another one through the Vermont Library Association that's just anyone can join that one. But I don't usually put the CE on there just because it gets really crowded, and I don't want to overcrowd. People get too many emails. So, but if you just come in, once a week or something, and look at the page we were just talking about, you'll see things. So there's another question in the chat. Yes, just to clarify, if you take the Idaho core classes, they do count for the core classes in Vermont. So if you do the whole sequence, each topic has 4 webinars from Idaho, and just send me a copy of those certificates, and that will fulfill your requirements. And then, are there any other questions? And of course, you can always contact me anytime, email or my phone, which is on my email signature. And then there is an evaluation. This project outcome thing is a link to do an electronic evaluation of this orientation, so I can know for next time if it's helpful to add different things, or more pictures of my dogs, or whatever feedback you would like to give. It's only about 5 questions, so very short. Any other questions for now?
I don't have any questions. I'm glad I stayed on, Joy. So thank
good.
You, even though
Rob, these slides will be posted on the website. So if you want to go back and look at them, you wouldn't have to listen to the whole hour that you just listened to. You could but you could scroll through them, just because they do have the links and sort of all in one place.
No, it's great.
Well, good, and welcome. I'm really so glad that more and more people are doing this certificate program, and that as people that sometimes aren't directors or aren't at libraries yet are doing it. I think that's just going to be good for libraries in the long term. So I'm really glad you're all here. And again, get in touch anytime. If you go home and start thinking about this and realize like something didn't make sense, just shoot me an email and I'll try to, or call me and we can talk through it again.
Thanks so much, Joy.
You're welcome.
Sounds good. Thank you, Joy.
Yeah, thank you.
All the best, everyone. Maybe we can all meet in person one day.
Absolutely.
That would be nice.